But I got some coding done. So let's look at that. Let's see. I created this pretty cool LLM memory system. So I can show you that real quick. Basically, I've been trying to contribute to this open source OpenAI Swift package, where basically they recreate Python's OpenAI package that OpenAI actually developed, and we're trying to recreate that in Swift, and they pretty much already did that. So what I'm doing is building on top of it, and I'm trying to build like a LangChain type systems into it. Now, I'll be honest, I don't really know how LangChain works, so I've just been like making up how I'm going to do all this stuff. I've kind of looked into it a little bit, reading through its code. I've read through its documentation a bunch, and the documentation sucks. But essentially, I think I showed you guys this. I have, let's see, I think that's like decent. Can you see that? I have this injector agent, which has conversation scope, memory system, a chat system. And basically what a chat system is it's a set of prompts that can be injected into the conversation. And then, it comes down here, you do like perform check-in. Well, first you say, let's see, should check in on chat. Basically, this has a check-in rate, and it checks if how many messages have gone by, and then if enough messages have gone by, it says, okay, we should check in, and then it performs the check-in, and it sets the scope, the memory. Basically, conversation scope is a way of keeping track of the scope of the conversation, saying, hey, this is what the conversation's about, this is where we're going with it, this is what's going on. Memory is a memory strategy. I'll show you what those are in a second. And then in get phase number, it basically just asks ChatGPT, hey, what phase should we enter? Where your phases are, let's see, system phases. Let's go into here. Oh, wait, no. Whoops. Into here. Here we go. So chat system basically has a set of phases, a phase progression style, whether that be linear or non-linear. Linear just means you go from one phase to the next. Non-linear means you can go from one phase to any of the phases. And then, let's see, if I go into my actual phases, chat systems, this is essentially the set of phases that we have access to. So gathering context just asks contextual questions. Introspection essentially like does introspective questions. Advice gives advice. Reflection has the user reflect on ideas and advice. Historical stories tells historical stories. Make a plan. Acceptance and questioning limiting beliefs. So that was some pretty cool stuff. Oh, and then, so the memory system, basically you have this agent, and there are a set of different possible memory systems that it can use. And each memory system is going to work very differently. So one is the scope memory, another is user context memory, another might be search memory, and another might be summary memory, right? And ultimately, all of these memory strategies boil down to being a string representation of the memory that gets pumped into ChatGPT. So I used this design pattern, and I'll draw it out real quick. Actually, I think I have a drawing over here somewhere. Here we go. Oh, I wish I could, how like Snapchat has a thing where you can just like turn your camera around? I so wish I could do that on here. Here we go. Can y'all see that? No, there we go. Here's what we're looking at. So we got this, oh man, this is so hard. I gotta find like a new way to do these things. Well, I guess I could just turn the camera around, huh? There we go. That's way easier. So essentially what you have is three key factors. You have pieces. You have your context, your strategy interface, and your concrete strategies. Now your content has an interface. It has some strategy, or your context, right? And that's the client. So in our case, that context is this injector agent right here. And you can see right here, it has a memory strategy, which is of type memory strategy interface. Essentially what a protocol is, so that's a protocol, and a protocol is basically a form of inheritance-ish, but not really, where everything that inherits from it like quote unquote conforms to this protocol, which means that it has to have all of these functions. So it has to have a memory description property, it has to have a memory string, it has to have a set and get memory string function that takes this chat object, is asynchronous and throws and shoots out a string. But then its actual implementation can be whatever the hell it wants. So in my case, these two right now are pretty similar, but you have set memory string for chat, let agent. So basically this is where it sets the memory string, and it goes through here. It has a specific prompt that it uses in order to tell ChatGPT, hey, here's the conversation, write a description of the scope of the conversation. Whereas this one works essentially the same, except instead it's sending in an update memory prompt, where this memory prompt is saying, let's see, this memory prompt is this memory prompt right here, and that's essentially saying, hey, extract, based on the conversation so far, extract information about the user. So this memory type is going to be more useful when you have an agent that needs to have more contextual awareness of the user itself, or of the user themselves. And this memory type is going to be more useful when you have an agent that needs to have more awareness of just the general scope of the conversation. And then you can also mix and match and use multiple types. And then down here, I'm going to add more types. I was thinking about doing a search type, which is where I created this query memory with a query parameter or argument. I always forget whether the receiving one is the parameter or the argument. I think this would be parameter. Yeah. So in this case, user context, it's literally just returning this string, return memory string. But let's say I want to create a search type memory where it's going to have all of the chat, and it's going to ask a question about that chat. So it's going to say, like, we're in conversation with a user. The user refers to something that probably was talked about within the chat. It's going to generate a query. It's going to stick that query in here, and then it's going to say, basically find the answer to this question in the scope of our conversation. And it'll go back up to the beginning of the conversation and look for the answer. When it finds the answer, take that out and return that, and that'll end up being a string ultimately. So it'll just return that string. Anyway, so yeah. So these are those things, concrete strategies. So if we come back over to here, we have concrete strategies or concrete behaviors. So those are these actual things, the actual implementations, the things that conform to that interface or that protocol. And then essentially what you're able to do is define a client, which is going to have some strategy. And then when you create that client, you can decide which strategy you actually want. So if I come back over to our injector agent, you'll see that our memory strategy can be any memory interface. Now our scope, in the case of how the injector agent works, the injector agent needs to use the scope in order to generate some information. So we're starting it off with a scope, and then we're giving it this memory strategy. And so when I declare my memory strategy, or when I declare my agent in, what is this? In my testing view model, here we go. It can have some memory strategy get passed in. Now in my case, I'm automatically setting it to CMS user context, but I could over here pass in a different memory strategy, and it'll just choose whichever one of these we actually want. Anyway, pretty cool stuff. I was really happy with how that turned out. I was honestly tweaking about like how the fuck am I going to implement memory, because it was kind of weird just trying to figure out how you could have all these different approaches to memory and actually use them and have them be flexible, and then have it where it's like you could add new memory types and all that kind of bullshit. And that was just like the perfect design pattern that I found yesterday. Spent like 2 hours like taking notes on how to do all that shit. Made it, felt really good. Always a good time. That's the thing about mastery. Is I was watching like a little clip by Robert Greene yesterday, and he was just talking about, look, you spend 1 or 2 or 3 years, you just sit down, start playing the piano, boop, 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 boop. You're not really like feeling the flow. You're not really feeling the experience of being a piano player. But once you get 2, 3 years down the road, you get to have these experiences that are blocked off by years of experience. And I feel like I've been at that place with coding for a while, but it keeps like getting more and more intense, where I'm starting to really get to expand my understanding of these things. I'm getting to dive deep into all of these much more complex principles that like a year ago, it's like I was just learning what a protocol was, and I was trying to like write a fucking protocol or use protocols to pass data from one page to another or one screen to another. And now it's like I'm getting to learn these crazy complex design patterns and implementing them to create really, really reusable, clean code. What is it? It's like the open closed strategy, or the open closed principle, where you want, what the hell was the open closed principle? It's like you want your code to be open to expansion, but closed to getting changed, right? So it's like you want your code to be set up in such a way that new programmers can come in and add to its functionality, make it more functional, add to what it can do without having to go into your actual code, existing code, and make changes. And that's what this approach really let me do. Anyway, enough rambling about these things. Yeah, it's been a good couple of days. Maybe my friend's about to come pick me up to go to the gym. So maybe I'll do a little chit chat with her on the way, and then take some gym videos, for real this time though. Maybe.